Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Megwe and we are talking about allergies today, especially now that we are in the cold season and allergies tend to rise during that period. And to help me in this conversation in studio, I'm joined by Dr. Evelyn Nganga, who is a pediatrician and also an allergy specialist. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you, Mike.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well this morning.
Yes.
Truly privileged to be here.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Now, allergies. When we talk about allergies, there are many people who do not know really if they have allergic symptoms or just, and they tend to treat these allergies with allergic medicine. So where do we draw the line between non-allergic symptoms and allergy symptoms?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, this is a very passionate subject for me. And so I'm glad to be here to speak about it and to educate the public. So basically, for you to term something as an allergy, it needs to be your immune system abnormally reacting to something otherwise ordinary and causing a reaction. So these allergic symptoms can have an overlap with other day-to-day illnesses. So for instance, someone who's having a common cold may present as someone who has allergic symptoms. And the premise or the understanding that people should have is that when we use anti-allergy medication, it's not that the medication is solely for allergies only, it's the way the medication works. So for instance, antihistamines, just as the word alludes to, it is something that counteracts the histaminergic or the histamine levels in your body. So it can occur during an illness or it can also occur during an allergic reaction. But for allergies, the way to sort of distinguish it is that it will persist. It tends to be more of a chronic illness. So it's not something that will happen just for a day and then disappear, never to come back again.
When we talk about allergies, there are seasonal allergies. There are people who have allergies during the dry season. There are people who have allergies during the cold season. But when you look at it, allergies in the cold season tend to be a little bit higher. Why is that?
So allergies, first of all, is very broad, right? And it affects multiple systems.
Yes.
So you'll find some of the symptoms patients may have during the dry seasons are affecting certain systems, whereas the ones happening in the cold season are also affecting certain systems. So I'll give an example. Right now we've been having a cold season, on and off changes here and there. It tends to affect mostly the respiratory system during this time. And the reason being, a lot of patients who have asthma, which is a type of allergy, will have triggers such as cold. So the cold actually triggers them and gives them a flare. In addition, during this period, we are more predisposed to viral infections. And viral infections can actually exacerbate allergies. So for instance, a child gets a common cold and they have maybe history of eczema. You may find that during that period, the eczema gets worse, just because the immune system has been stimulated by this ongoing infection. The other thing would be also during the dry season, the dust. So dust also tends to be a trigger to patients who have allergies. So you'll find in different seasons, there are different external factors that are driving those allergies. And these are the different allergens. So you can have, as I mentioned, dust, which is basically the dust mites in the dust. In a cold season, you have the cold air being an irritant. But you could also have other things like pets. So for instance, if you've just acquired a new pet, you start having symptoms that you probably never had. So it's not just the cold season that triggers allergies. Actually, allergies can be triggered all year round by different external factors.
I've heard people say they are allergic to cats. And I find it that a little bit weird because it's just an animal. So it has allergens. Some pets may have allergens.
Yes, so like the main ones that we have seen, or are the ones we interact with commonly. So your cats, dogs, for those who keep rabbits or even hamsters. Some people are allergic to horses as well. And even our household friends that we call cockroaches, that sometimes we don't even know exist in our homes.
What? The allergies caused by cockroaches?
Yes, you could actually have a cockroach allergy, and it's quite common.
So what type of allergy is that? Is it a rash or?
So for things like pets and cockroaches, they're in the same category as the grass pollen and the dust mites. They irritate through inhalation. Okay. But they can also irritate any surfaces on your body that are external and can come into contact with them. So for instance, a person will go touch a cat and they somehow rub their eyes or touch their eyes, and before long the eyes are red and swollen. Okay. For cockroach allergies, it can exacerbate an asthma patient to get like regular flare-ups of asthma. These house dust mites that I'm mentioning that occur in dusty areas, they love places like carpets, our mattresses where we lay and spend many hours of the night on, including pillows, the upholstery on our couches, curtains. So these are things that live with us and not necessarily seen by us. Yeah, that can trigger us.
Are there genetic, or what is the role of genetic predisposition in developing allergies?
It plays a very big role, actually. And for me, even as I assess patients, we always have to ask, is there somebody in your immediate family who has allergies? Because it's been found, if you have, say, one parent with allergies, then your risk goes up to double. If you have 2 parents who have allergies, then your risk goes up to 4 times in terms of predisposition to getting allergies. And that state, we call it atopy, so it means you have genetic predisposition to acquiring allergies. So it's very important, yeah.
And also, between adults and children, what is the rate of allergies when it comes, who are more prone to get these allergies?
Okay, so we find like globally, allergies in children will vary between 0.5% to 2% or thereabout. That may be slightly higher in adults. And the allergies that are seen in these groups can vary. So they can be a little bit different. But you find that most people who have allergies will actually get it in their early childhood. So you'll start to notice allergies from when as early as less than 1 year, actually. Yeah. And there's something we call the atopic march, which basically means that when a child starts off with a particular allergy early on in life, it continues to sort of progress as it involves different systems. So I'll give an example. The commonest is eczema, which affects a majority of our children right now, and they tend to be less than 1 year. Then after that, you start to notice that they may even acquire a food allergy as a result. And then they may progress to have what we call allergic rhinitis or hay fever, which is basically the child who's always blocked or has a cold that never seems to end. So, a parent will come and tell you, my child has a cold that doesn't seem to end. They have a cold all through. Okay, so we call that allergic rhinitis. And it also may be associated with snoring and congestion. And then that then progresses because it's sort of like the nose is the beginning part of the respiratory system, and that can then track downwards towards your lungs, and you can end up with asthma. So we call that the atopic march. So it sort of progresses step by step, involving different systems. For some, they will outgrow. For others, it will persist well into the adulthood.
Okay. Yeah. Now, is there a difference between allergy symptoms and allergies triggered by colds and other illnesses?
Yes, so there's a difference. And what I would say the difference is first of all, the mechanism. So as I had mentioned, so our immune system can work in 2 ways. It can work to help guard you against infection, but it can also be overstimulated and be driven towards an allergic kind of pathway. So the underlying mechanism tends to be different for both. The difference between allergy and the infection will clear after some time. So once you have given the treatment, you've addressed the issues surrounding that. If it is a viral infection, treat the viral infection, more symptomatic treatment. If it's a bacterial infection, address that with antibiotics, and the child is well. What I notice people tend to do, they may treat an allergy condition with antibiotics thinking it's an infection, whereas it's actually an allergy. The beauty about allergies, our bodies will actually show us that this is an allergy, even by looking at a child's face. They have some signs, what we call signs, that can guide you towards seeing it or understanding it to be an allergy. I'll give an example. We have children who have darkening under the eyes. We call that allergic shyness. And for some, they may even have very distinct lines under the eyes. They always wake up looking puffy. So you may think, what's going on with this child? Maybe they've not had a good night's rest. But it's actually a sign of allergies. There are those children who have the white part of our eye that we call the sclera is browning or is becoming very red all the time. That also will help you point towards allergies. The nose, a lot of us don't look at the noses, like this is not for healthcare professionals. So sometimes we miss out on looking into the nose, and the nose can also tell you something. So there are those who may have a crease over their nose because they're constantly rubbing their noses. Or what we call the allergic salute, so they're always doing this. That will point you towards it being more of an allergy. Yeah, and then the skin as well will tell you. Speaking of
Skin, there's an allergy called cold urticaria. We want to talk about it.
Okay, why that one in particular?
Because because it's an allergy that comes maybe within minutes after exposure to cold.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one. So cold urticaria is sort of an example that falls under a bigger umbrella that we call chronic urticaria. So chronic urticaria just means a person has been having what we call hives or bumps on their skin for a period longer than 6 weeks. This urticaria can be triggered by different things, and when it's triggered by cold, we call it cold urticaria. We had an interesting case of a child who, whenever they eat ice lollies or they eat ice cream, their lips would swell up. And so it was quite an enigma for most, wondering what's really the matter with this child. So it was because whenever the cold ice cream or the cold ice lolly comes into contact with their body literally reacts against that exposure to the cold.
And not even ice cream. I've had children who take soda and they develop problems with their tonsils.
Yeah, because we know sugar causes irritation in our throats. And with the irritation, it also creates a very nice background for infections to lodge there. So be it viral infections or bacterial infections. And a lot of the time when patients come to see me with a tonsillitis, I'll always ask, was there a party over the weekend? Did this child indulge in some sugary things? Because there's actually a very strong link with that. Yeah, so back to the cold urticaria. So those patients also really struggle during seasons of cold, or if they travel to a country that's very cold and has very bad winters. So you end up having these hives that are very itchy and can really affect your quality of life. Yeah.
So how do you navigate around cold urticaria?
Okay, so you'd have to, first of all, ensure that this patient is avoiding certain things. So they're not going to be out there eating ice lollies and ice cream and that kind of stuff. And in cold season, ensuring that they're as warm as possible. And if at any point they do develop the urticaria, then they would need to take some antihistamines, which is basically to try and control the abnormal stimulation of the immune system by the cold.
Is there a nexus between reduced exposure to germs in early life and the development of allergies?
Yes. We call that the hygiene hypothesis. So it's been shown that over time, allergies have been increasing with time. And during the period where we started introducing things like, cleanliness, hygiene, much earlier, like probably sometime in the 19th century, over time it's been shown that exposure to germs is good. When we become too clean, that's bad. And how that works, so just generally on our bodies, we have what we call the microbiome, right? Which is a collection of different bacteria, viruses, fungus that coats our skin, coats our gut, coats our respiratory system. And the function of this microbiome is to do something we call immunomodulation. So it sort of keeps the immune system in check to avoid the immune system from skewing to an allergic kind of reaction. Now, when you withdraw that and you end up being too clean, kids are not in the rural areas where they're interacting with dogs and getting the dog microbiome on them. They're not interacting with cats, getting the cat microbiome on them, interacting with the soil and getting the soil microbiome on them. They end up too clean. They end up with a not as robust microbiome as they should. And so they tend to sort of skew towards allergies. And then if you combine that with genetics, so you're done.
So kids should be left to play.
Kabisa.
Because there are people who are skeptical about, oh, unajipaka uchafu sijui nini, you'll
That's
get
the
sick.
best thing you can do for your child as they are growing up in the first like 5 years. They've actually shown that children in the rural areas have much less allergies than those in the urban areas. That's like scientific.
Yes.
And it's been pegged to some of these things. So of course, better nutrition also in terms of wholesome foods in rural areas as opposed to our more westernized diets in urban areas. So please let your child roll in the mud, roll in the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them do what they're supposed to do as children. Yeah.
Okay, we talk about symptoms, allergic symptoms. How can you really tell that these are not allergic symptoms? Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a difficult question. I think, so as a lay person, it may be difficult for you to tell. But a doctor should be able to assess this child and look at them. So first of all, as I mentioned, the signs. So does this child have signs that are, linked to what an allergic child looks like? So the ones that I mentioned. How often are these symptoms occurring? So is it something that is quite persistent and that despite medication, they're not improving? And a lot of the patients I receive are patients who have been under so many treatments, through so many doctors, they never seem to get better because all the symptoms they present with have never been put together as an allergy. Because if you don't do that, then you'll start treating the nose separately, you'll treat the chest separately, whereas you're supposed to actually treat all these things comprehensively to be able to allow this child to be better. So the symptomatology or the frequency of symptoms is going to give you some guidance on the same. When you do blood testing, you'll find that there's no infection in this child. They're quite okay. So then in that regard, allergies should be high on the list. Yeah.
So are there diets that contribute to allergies?
That's a good question. So what I would say is, for certain allergies, so for instance, like the urticaria that I mentioned, where you get like hives generalized and it's chronic over a long duration of time, we have found that foods that are rich in preservatives can actually drive that. And by foods rich in preservatives, I mean things like sausages, bacon, salami, so things that have been processed, like highly processed. The snacks that we love to give our children that have different colors, the wow-wows, I don't know, some are even called, I don't know, the ABC or whatever, crisps that have all these different flavors and stuff. So these things have been shown to be able to drive some of these issues. And by the way, they could also trigger an asthma attack for children who have asthma, including the juices that we like to mix. So for instance, something like, okay, maybe let me not give brands, but just basically if you're going to use a concentrate of juice and mix to give your child, or sodas, so all these things that tend to have colors and are highly flavored can actually drive or trigger allergies. And then generally, as a prevention measure, we usually say the prevention of allergies begins from when a mother is pregnant, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. So we backtrack all the way to when the mother is pregnant. She's supposed to be on a healthy diet during that period. So studies have shown what we call the Mediterranean diet is very good in terms of allergy prevention. So it backtracks to when a mother is pregnant. And then when the baby is born, breastfeeding is very key in terms of regulation of allergies. And then after that, just ensuring that your child is on a wholesome diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables. That also helps to create a healthy microbiome that I had mentioned.
Are there common allergies in children that are not common in adults and vice versa?
Yes. I would say, for instance, eczema and food allergies tend to be more common in the young, so in children, and they'll tend to also appear much earlier in life. Whereas in adults, they tend to experience allergies that pertain to either the nose or the respiratory system and the urticaria that I'm mentioning. So you'll find that, yeah, there's a bit of a difference between the two sides.
And for the adults, does it get worse with age?
Well, I would say allergies generally get better with age. They don't get worse.
Okay.
You'll find that a majority of children may outgrow their allergies by the time they're turning 5. Some it may progress up to about the age of 12 years, and then they're okay. But it's not to say in your adulthood you cannot acquire allergies that you did not have as a child, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but the good news, if there's any good news this morning, is that allergies tend to be outgrown a majority of the time.
Yeah, if you're talking about seasonal allergies, how do we prevent them now? Yeah.
Okay. So first of all is to understand what is your allergy to begin with. Okay, so seek help, get to know what allergy you're actually dealing with. Step 2 would be to identify what is it in that season that's affecting you. Is it just the cold? Or is it that during that season, maybe you're on school holiday and for some reason, maybe you're now at home more often, meaning you're on the couch more often, you're on the carpet more often, you're interacting with pets that you may have in your home more often. And so you're seeing it more of a seasonal allergy. So it's trying to understand what is it in that season that's driving you or driving your allergies. Is it because that season also comes with an excess of infections? So like now we're having lots of flus. So we usually say for the children who are predisposed, and they need to get their flu shots or their flu vaccines so that they can be at a better or have less exacerbation of the allergies. And then avoiding your triggers. I think once you understand your triggers, which can be done through allergy testing, once you understand, is it a food trigger, is it an environmental trigger, then you're in a better position to control your allergies.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, people think that allergies are only gotten outside the house, but even the remaining indoors is also a predisposing factor.
Absolutely.
So how do you ensure that the house in which you live in does not expose you to allergies?
So first of all, the environment. So you'll find that there are certain zones which are either, so maybe you're living in a place where there's always construction happening, for instance. So there's always dust everywhere. Yeah. So we always say, close your windows if you know that the area in which you live has a lot of dust, and you have found that you are, predisposed to the dust. A second thing is to try and keep your upholstery, curtains, carpets as clean as possible, because as I have mentioned, dust mites love to thrive in these places, and they're not visible to the naked eye. They're very tiny, you cannot see them. And for the kids who are having very severe allergic reactions, especially when they're home, we usually advise to just have the carpets removed. The other thing is like the period where we had very heavy rain in this country, there was a lot of leakages. That's when you get to know how good your roof is in terms of how well it was constructed, right? So you end up with leakages and can then predispose to mold. That's something that most people don't really think about. So if you enter a room and you find it's very damp, or it just smells moldy, or you can literally see the mold on the walls, then you'd need to address that. So address the leakage, address the mold, get it cleaned out, get it repainted. Because you find during those periods, there's some children who end up coughing a lot more, or they just seem sicker during that period.
Yes.
And then, as I mentioned, there are those who may have indoor pets as well. Then you want to cuddle your cats or your dogs. Create what we call pet-free zones in the house if there's someone in the house who's having allergy. But if it's a very severe allergy, that is impacting the quality of life greatly, just get rid of the pets. Yeah. So just keep your house as clean as possible, ensure there's no mold, ensure there's good aeration, and you should be fine.
People have different ways of dealing with the common cold, that is homa.
Yeah.
There are those who use a concoction of several things. There are those who use other medicine like Beriton, cetirizine. So is there a general treatment to this, or it just depends with the person?
Okay, so when it comes to common colds, it's very interesting. Because even among healthcare professionals, we all do different things for our patients.
Yeah, like
right?
you go to a hotel, unasikia mtu ameitisha niletee dawa, like that.
Yeah, the concoction.
Yes.
And even during COVID, there was a lot of use of these natural remedies. It's not to say that they don't have their place, because what they have been shown to do is to literally stimulate your immune system and to help you fight the infection better. They contain things like vitamin C that we know is important for us to be able to fight infection. And so those concoctions have their place, all right? But so do the other medications that we give. Viral infections, we just tend to treat it more of symptoms, right? So if a child is having a fever, you want to just help relieve the fever. If they're having a drippy nose constantly, watery eyes, then there's room for an antihistamine. If their noses are blocked or have a lot of mucus, then you'd like to keep washing out the nose, and we use saline washes or saline rinses. Yeah, so that would help. Lots of hydration and lots of rest, and also the good old vitamin D. So go out to the sun and actually get some sunshine to help you overcome your infection and help you to just boost your immune system as well.
How long should one wait to maybe seek for an intervention once they identify allergic symptoms?
Immediately. You know, you can literally shorten your suffering, let me call it that, because I find that patients who have allergies tend to suffer a lot, and not just the patient themselves or the person, even the family. So the sooner you get help, then the better for you, and the quicker your quality of life is improved, which for me, I would say, is the main aim of the treatment I give or the management I give to my patients, is to just ensure that the quality of life of this particular person is improved, and as a whole, that of the family. Yeah.
Somebody here is asking, treatment of cold with amoxicillin and cetirizine, if it's okay. It's so common with this cold. What else can we do apart from using this? Amoxicillin, cetirizine?
Yeah. So first of all, that goes down to what we call antibiotic stewardship, right? In this country, we are known to overuse antibiotics, even for things that do not require antibiotics. So just that question in itself, that when someone is having a common cold, you're giving them amoxicillin and cetirizine, completely unacceptable. Viral infections should be treated as viral infections. Antibiotics are supposed to treat bacteria. So if someone is coming with a common cold that is being driven by a virus, there's no place for an antibiotic at all. And you'll find that you're just basically exposing this child to antibiotics unnecessarily, to the point where when they actually require the antibiotics, they've already gotten resistance to that particular antibiotic. So we do not advocate for use of antibiotics for common colds. That one is completely out.
Actually, I wanted to ask if there's a correlation between the overuse of antibiotics and the development of allergies.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we find that it's mostly pregnant moms. If there's an overuse of antibiotics, they can actually predispose their child to getting allergies with time, if they're using antibiotics when they're not supposed to be used. But in terms of a child who's been born and you're giving them antibiotics and predisposition, I wouldn't say there's a direct link, or at least there's none that I know of myself.
So for an expectant mother, if there is an allergy, symptoms or a reaction, they should not take medicine unless prescribed by their doctors.
Doctor. Yes, because it's a very, very sensitive period. And it should not just be taking medication left, right, center. It needs to be guided by a healthcare professional. Something as simple as even paracetamol, you know, the overuse of paracetamol in pregnancy has also been shown to predispose or to increase the risk of that offspring having allergies. So let's just be very judicious in our use of drugs, especially during that period of pregnancy.
You know, you say that, but there's a section of people who self-diagnose and decide which medicine to take. What are the dangers involved here, especially when we are talking about allergies?
So the dangers, number one, you're treating the wrong thing. So you're just dousing yourself with medication that your body does not require. And also, if you're using an overuse of antibiotics, as we mentioned, then you're putting yourself at risk of getting resistance to these antibiotics. The third thing I would say is that you end up with reduced quality of life because you're not really addressing the issue as it would have been addressed by someone who's understanding what you're actually facing. So let's avoid all this self-diagnosis that we do.
Because, for instance, somebody may start feeling cold or a little bit the temperature, body temperature rises, and they are saying, this is malaria. I'll go to the doctor, to the
Chemist,
over the counter,
yeah,
take the
anti-malarial drugs.
Yes. So how can one boost now the immune system to prevent or mitigate risks associated with allergies?
Okay. So as I mentioned, the key stage, pregnancy. So during pregnancy, that is a very critical stage, especially if you know that you have allergies in your family, and it's a genetic predisposition. So we advise these moms, get lots of vitamin D, ensure you're eating a balanced diet, ensure after the baby is born, as much as possible, breastfeed this baby, because breastfeeding has been found to have great impact in the reduction of allergies. In fact, even in the last breastfeeding week that we had sometime in August, earlier in the month, we discussed this. Then the other thing is, during the weaning period, if you're trying to avert food allergies, you're supposed to introduce as many foods as possible between the ages of 6 months to 12 months, because your immune system at that point has actually given you leeway to introduce this food. So the highly allergenic foods. So I mean things like eggs, things like fish, things like beef, things like chicken, things like peanuts that people are so afraid to do. So the body actually gives you a window to introduce those foods. So the earlier you do that, the better. And then as a child progresses, as they grow, ensure that their diet is balanced. You know, a lot of us sometimes, because a child will only do what you have taught them to do from a very early stage. So ensure that your child's diet is balanced. I'm sure we've all done, you know, food groups, so we understand the food groups. Then the other thing is vitamin D. Allow your child to play. Let them be outside. Let them, and vitamin D has been found to really strengthen your immune system, by the way. Even for adults, a lot of us are indoors, so our immune systems dip. For instance, even during COVID, our immune systems dipped in terms of how robust they are. We were not getting enough sunshine, we were not getting enough exposures, we were too clean. Allow your children to play, let them get dirt. That helps to drive the immune system. And that way, and good sleep as well, by the way.
Good sleep.
Good sleep. And for adults, regular exercise.
So there's a correlation between sleep deprivation and exposure to allergies?
Well, sleep deprivation and immune dysfunction. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Well, nice. Okay, there are cases where one is exposed to allergens, but they do not react immediately.
Right.
But later on develop these allergic symptoms. So how do you determine what allergen affected you?
So as you rightfully put it, so like for allergies, there's two types. So there's those immediate reactions. You eat an egg, you react. We know it's the egg. But there are those children or even adults who may have delayed reactions, as you have well put it, and that the reactions may come a day, 2 days, a few days after. So it is for us as the healthcare professionals to try and understand the circumstances in the last, say, week or two. And when it comes to drug allergies, which we haven't even spoken about, you have to date it back to what medication have you taken in the last 6 to 10 weeks back. Even up to 3 months, by the way. You can have a very delayed reaction to drug allergies specifically. So once you understand that, and also allergies sort of they tell a tale, if I could say that, you'll be able to know or have an inclination towards a certain allergy based on how they have presented. So then you can be able to ask those directed questions and then do allergy testing where necessary, and then arrive at the diagnosis.
Due to the interest of time, the parting shots.
Wow, okay. So it's just to tell the public that allergies are rising even here in our country. There are ways we can prevent them. I've emphasized on the pregnancy period. Let us allow our children to play in that and to be exposed to sunshine, to be able to boost their immunity. Children with allergies can outgrow them, and so it's not like you've been, like your child has not been condemned to having allergies forever. And that there's help that they can seek and find to be able to identify what particular allergy that they have, There's allergy testing that's available here in our country, and as a result, we are able to improve your quality of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Asante sana for making time for Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, that is Dr. Evelyn Nganga, who is a pediatrician and also an allergy specialist, talking to us about tackling allergies. This is where we cap this conversation. Don't go too far. Good Morning Kenya continues shortly, but on the other side of Radio Taifa. My name is Mike Migwe. Good morning.